couple of times. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, he got it the cast put on yesterday. So see how it goes.
That'd be about 6 weeks or so.
About 6 weeks, yeah. It's amazing when you see the X-ray of what his ankle looked like versus
What was wrong with it?
all the cartilage is gone. He injured it several years ago, and they, did some stuff. But
Hello.
arthritis, bone to bone, just arthritis, just really bad. So
I had plantar fasciitis ankle.
I've had that too.
Did surgery over in Korea, and that military doc just messed me up. It still feels funny when I touch it.
Really?
Yeah, I still have a little bit of problem, but yeah, I was in a cast for that.
Yeah, I've had plantar, and I was praying I didn't have to have the surgery. So far I hadn't had.
I think he just wanted to do the surgery.
I'm good. Talking about arthritis, I can hardly open these drink bottles because of the
Yeah.
in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had to cut my wedding band off today. We had been on there 40-something years. It was cutting into my finger.
Yeah. So that's not a good thing, but yet a good thing, huh?
Hey, Shannon.
How y'all do?
Hey, Shannon, how are you?
All right. It's going.
I've had some people that have talked with, well, Shannon too, but have talked directly to Barry. That guy that y'all he's very helpful. He really says, hey, if you need
Right.
anything,
Everything turn you right?
make it easy to navigate stuff.
We're gonna get that done.
Which project we talking about? The little street with no name? Good.
I'll get it out. It needs to be
Street with no name.
It didn't have a name. They got it included on the list. It didn't have a name.
What's the name of it?
It doesn't have one.
Oh, it didn't have one.
There's no email on one. Nobody's address is linked to that road.
Yeah.
Is that on
There's
our
a
agenda?
handful.
Okay.
Is there a house on that
Is that
road?
added?
Or does it just connect the two streets together?
One driveway off that road.
Yeah.
Mailbox is on.
Oh, for children's.
Weeder Street or Auburn? Yeah.
Beverly.
It's a short section.
The other thing I called about was
Beverly.
we talked about before, 100 Brenda Lane.
Going to a soccer game.
That house has been a nuisance for 2 or 3 years. You caught on fire, remember? I rode by there today. That place is awful.
So you'll be the worst.
We've got to do something about that. The neighbors.
Cool.
Hey, how you doing, Brother Patrick? Got a new moment? Ain't that all right? You got on a new suit?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, that's good.
It's new for council. I mean, I would think we can answer any questions.
Just have to break it in to you.
For a while.
I like that color.
Look as dapper as ever.
We had a business.
That's what you're good at. What's up again?
Anything about sports?
No.
Did you talk to that lady?
We'll do that at the game. We'll probably do
No. She just wanted to know about the demolition grant. Remember I called you? She called me that day. Tell you. Okay. She was wanting to get on the list. Thank you. I'm gonna give her a call to say, hey, glad you got it.
We will have more lists than we got.
I don't think we'll have any questions.
So I'm gonna call and say, hey, thanks for taking part in it. Okay. Beverly. to you this week. That's how I've been trying to get your attention, but she won't come up for Al.
I tell we saw it.
But I enjoyed it. It was nice.
Good.
I shouldn't have said it like that. I thought the whole time. It was really good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 5 o'clock, so I will call this work session Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the City Council are present. So, Jonathan, can you give us an update on our Q1 goals of anything that's off track?
Yeah, at this point, everything seems to be on track to complete in Q1, and then I think, barring any setbacks at the next council meeting, we should be complete with all Q1 goals and ready for Q2.
All right, and staying on that, we agreed to meet at 4 o'clock next meeting. Isn't that what we agreed to? So 4 o'clock. So Caroline, you may want to make note of that. Our next work session is at 4 o'clock, 2 weeks from tonight. So, and we'll devote the first hour to our second quarter strategic planning initiatives. So, all right. Thank you, Jonathan. Moving on to agenda review. So if y'all could turn in the big packet here. Beverly, any updates to our, so this should be the same agenda that we received on Friday. Y'all stop me if I run past something that you want to talk about in more detail. But we've got our consent agenda, which consists of work session and meeting minutes, accounts payable A and B, some contract billings from Wiregrass Construction for the resurfacing project, Poly, CDG, and Fine Getty. We've got our travel request, and then we've got a request from Church with You egg drop. We've done this the last several years. Chief Davis, Billy, any issues with his egg drop? I mean, this is what we've been doing for several years, right? Okay. And we'll have privileged floor and staff reports. So the old business, we've got the annexation and zoning hearing of the Howell property. We've got a public hearing, so we don't really. I know that's going to be a topic of much discussion, but I think the way that'll look is we haven't had a lot of these that actually went into discussion. I fully expect us to have discussion about this tonight. So what we'll do is we'll open the hearing, let anybody that wants to address us come, allow us to ask any questions of anybody, get clarity from staff and everything. Then we would close the hearing. Then there would be a motion and a second. Then we would debate it. We'd discuss it amongst ourselves after the hearing. So anybody have any issues with that? I mean, that's just standard procedure there. So all right, we've got following that the Thomas rezone. Then we have a public hearing for EGC Investments LLC, which is the rezone on Damascus Road there from R65 V1 to R65. Barry, how much time do we have? We want to discuss this completely in our regular meeting? I mean, what were y'all about these rezones?
Whatever you'd like. I noticed that one of the developers were here today. noticed that one of the developers was already here for the work session. I'm not sure if any of the others are, but
Right.
we're certainly happy to answer any questions at any point.
Well, we've only got about 10 more minutes to run through our agenda. So I think the most efficient use of our time would be to let's continue with our agenda review. If we've got time in the work session, we can discuss it. But if not, then we'll just save all that discussion for the allotted time in the work session. Is everybody okay with that? Because I just feel that if we're not careful, we could eat up all our work session time on that. All right. Sidewalk rehabilitation, Barry. You want to update us on that?
So on your agenda tonight, we have for the sidewalk rehab project. Remember, we put that project out for bid. End of last year, we got 0 bidders, hoping that the construction would slow down to the point that we would get some concrete type contractors that would want to bid on the project. They are busier now than they were end of last year. So we broke this bid up into 2 different portions. One of them is for the purchase of concrete only for the material itself. And I gave us some leverage if we wanted fiber, not fiber, if we wanted to pour, and they had to keep the truck there while we were trying to get something done, not just for this project, but for other projects for the city as well. Now we have a contract that's good for a good year, and we can renew that contract for 2 additional 1-year periods if both parties agree. So we can use that not just for the sidewalk project, but for any project. The second bid is for the labor to remove and install the sidewalks project, the one that we put out for bid last year, just the labor only. And we received 2 bids for that. You have the bid tab in your package. And so you have a recommendation from the engineering department to award those contracts to Lewis Construction.
Where's this concrete company from?
The material or the labor?
Company, where are they from?
It's the old Lafarge. They're local.
You see the trucks, SRM.
SRM. Shannon, where are they located? So I know they had several different locations, but they're local.
That looks like a huge discrepancy in
The labor prices.
I mean,
Yes, sir. Lewis is the contractor. As you know, that's the contractor that did the sidewalks around our Yancey Parker parking lot. It's the same contractor that did that work and did a really good job. So they are the lowest responsive bidder on this bid. So I was happy to see that we had a repeat. We had previous success with this contractor on another project, and they were the low bid on this project as well.
All right, and then on concrete, do we have an estimate for how much we're going to spend on that?
I did. I pulled that number. It was roughly, for dollar figure wise, is in that $20,000 to $30,000 number. So that gives you a rough idea.
So we'll be under 200,000, you think?
Yes, sir. Just under 200,000. Our estimate originally was $150,000 for this project. So we're about $50,000 over on this from what I anticipated the budgets to be last year. Yes, sir.
All right, then any questions for Barry on the sidewalk project?
do you have a list of where all these are? Because it's been so long, I can't remember where they are. You don't have to quote it tonight, but just.
I do have it. I'll be glad to forward to you. It's in the
Fine.
bid documents that we had them bid on. Has all the streets, everything laid out, and linear footages for each street. So I'll be glad to forward that to the council.
Yeah, if you could forward that to all of us, I'm sure we'll be getting questions.
Be glad to.
If we discussed it a year ago,
It's no problem. It's actually on the bid form, so I'll just send you the bid form from the low bid. That way you can see what he bid, and you can also see the street numbers and everything. The easiest way of doing that.
All right. Any other questions for Barry? All right. Thanks, Barry. All right. Then moving on to new business, we'll have introduced planning commission recommendation. So we're introducing that for the property owned by Kevin Axton from residential to and agriculture district R85 and R75A. Of course, we're just introducing that and announcing a public hearing to be held at the first meeting in April. Then we will authorize the mayor to execute the amendment to the SRO agreement. Jonathan, you come in to discuss this?
like Rayner's engaged in the hall and Chief Moore's out at a chief conference. But yeah, essentially, school system requested, I think 2 separate dogs. One, I guess the same dog can't do multiple tasks. If you're trained to sniff out, drugs, that dog wouldn't be the same as for explosives, right? So they would need 2 dogs to do that. It's a request that they have, and they would reimburse us the $38,000 or so that it would cost to do that. Buy the dogs, send them through the appropriate training, and there's some lead time on that. It's not like we can just go to Walmart and say I'd like that dog. We actually have to put in an order, and they have to go through the training program. So that's what it's about, and it's an amendment to the current SRO situation. We would be responsible to feed, the dog, which I think is, I want to say he said it was somewhere around $600 a year or something like that per dog. And they would be responsible for, in this case, dogs would be equipment. They would be classified as equipment, so that's what they would be responsible to reimburse.
All right, any questions of Jonathan for this amendment? I know this isn't the first time we've been briefed on this. All right, Neogov Service Agreement. This was introduced, or at least the idea of it was introduced a couple meetings ago, right?
Correct. It was one of your Q1 goals, was talking about the training of staff. I'm trying to look here to know what proposal and recommendation from staff on training and development plan. We introduced that at the last council meeting with a memorandum from our HR director talking about the program, the benefits. It's still something that staff is recommending. Certainly, if it was not a budgeted item, I've checked with Leanne. We certainly are running a surplus over our budget numbers that we budgeted for in terms of revenue, and would be able to absorb it without going into reserves or anything like that.
Any questions regarding the Neogov learning module?
Well, after studying this thing that they gave us previously in our last meeting, now this is just for 1 year. In the future, the next year, if you take another program, you're looking at another several $1,000s for each advanced program.
Correct. So and Christina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so this is a total cost to have access to their library of 1,200 programs or whatever that are out there. So we're basically paying for access, and it would be on an annual basis.
The prices that you guys have before you, they prorated the contract. So the contract would start April 1st and it would run until December. So it gave us an extension actually of the incentive pricing because they ran it concurrently so that when we get invoiced in December, it's at the same time that we get invoiced for Insight that we currently have. So then the incentive pricing would then, the $15,000 would start in December, and that would be for a year plus the training fee, the one-time training fee, and then it would go up in the second year to, I think it's $20,000.
And we're not obligating future years though what we're being asked to do
No,
tonight. So if we were unhappy with it, we could terminate.
It's for a period of 30, I think it's 32 or 33 months. So we would be obligated through the first 2 years.
Have you all already kind of structured how you're going to use this? Is it per month? You're going to have a different training, or how are you planning on maximizing this for that time period? So we know that,
Yes, sir.
I would like to see that, or know that you got something showing where every department is getting to know what exactly we're getting.
Are you going to administer this program?
Yes. So basically what will happen is in April we will start training of my staff and the department heads, and that's when we will develop the training that will be citywide, and then we will, after the department heads are familiar with the software, they'll come up with trainings specifically for each department,
that might be monthly training because there would be safety training monthly that would go in department wide. There would be quarterly training that we would put in, and then there's yearly training like your sexual harassment training. There's also other different trainings within the modules. So my office would be responsible for assigning the yearly or the quarterly trainings for all city employees, and then each department head would be responsible for assigning monthly, quarterly, or yearly trainings based on what their certifications are and what they require in that department.
One of the shortcomings that we've all talked about from the department staff, even in the HR department, that we recognize is that the city has a lot of liability when it comes to training our staff members. We need to, one, have a culture where we cultivate future talent within the organization, that they have leadership training and things like that. We all come from different backgrounds, so some of the things that maybe I learned and would expect somebody else to know, they don't know. They don't know how to do conflict resolution, as an example. But now we have a platform where we can kind of administer them and groom them to understand what that might look like. With customer service, those kind of things. We also have an issue like I said, when it comes to a liability for us. We've typically, what I've seen is, if we have the training, it's everybody gets into some classroom, like the Civic Center or something in a big setting. We've got a sign-in roster, and if Joe Snuffy was out that day or whatever, they'll have a makeup session, and it's very cumbersome to keep track of that. We've got to shut down that department or those operations. This gives us a lot of flexibility where the AM shift or PM shift can take it however they want to at the time when they have available to take it. So I think those kind of things also need to be considered with it as we look forward to ways we can do that. A lot of the department heads have talked to me and the mayor during staff meetings about, hey, I wish I had something that I could get this individual trained on. I'm concerned about safety. My guys are out here, just like on the parking lot we did. Barry talked to me about some of his guys. I didn't realize I needed to take them out and show them that they needed to have their reflective vest on or whatever. And if they were to get hit by a car, we didn't do that training. Maybe it wasn't current or it wasn't on file. And those kind of issues have come up where if we had an employee that had a hostile work environment potentially with another employee and they were butting heads, how do we get them to work together and get through that issue? And those kind of things keep surfacing, and we don't have a way to do that right now.
How many employees do we have on payroll?
Roughly around it's anywhere from 325 to 350 depending on seasonal staff.
I mean, so
that's all.
It's in the $50 per employee range. At $15,000, which I realize that's what it'll be next year, but maybe about $50 per employee if we're looking for perspective.
Seems like I remember reading through that you have the ability to track whether the employee actually did the training or not.
It's an LMS.
Yes, sir. My office, as well as each department head, will have access to where they can track their employees' progress. Through the different trainings, there won't be a way to speed through. So you'll know there will be tests that you have to take after some of the trainings. You can set up classroom modules as well that are specific to each department. And then if somebody keeps on failing a test, you can go in as an administrator, whether it be myself or one of the department heads, and see how long they're staying on a slide to see if it's just that they're not paying attention to the training that they're doing.
Well, that's good. I've had the bad experience of paying for training that people didn't use. So you can check up on that.
Yes.
Any other questions? Everybody on board with this? Any concerns?
It's useful. I just want to be sure we got something planned and know we're going to get started and kick it off. Sounds like they got ideas.
Okay. All right, so everybody's comfortable. All right, moving forward to Harris Security Systems Civic Center AV equipment. I know this is
Yeah.
It's been a difficult.
Yeah, we're going on a second year now with one projector inoperable at the Civic Center. Obviously, inflation and chip shortages and supply chain issues are kind of they're kicking our rear end right now, to put it mildly. We just had a situation where Tim Tebow's mother spoke at the I think a Healthy Women event at the Civic Center, and we with a shoestring kind of got the main projector back up and inoperable. It was not for that event. It's on its last leg, so then we'll be down the main projector and the right projector there, which will severely limit the capabilities of the Civic Center, which will limit who will want to use the Civic Center in the future. Right now, we're over a year on the lead time for what was out there quoted. We've gone to Best Buy, we've gone to Amazon, we've gone kind of full spectrum to other companies just to find out, do you have this in stock? Can we get this? Nobody has it. So we have found a very good, system. The issue is it's $27,000 more than what we budgeted. But even if they came in with a year and a half, 2 years from now, there's no telling what the price would be for what we would get and have available in inventory if they got it in inventory. And that's what the supply chain issue and chip shortage has created.
So, long story short, if we want to continue to have a full service offering out at the Civic Center for the users, this is the option that y'all have come up with.
Yeah, and this option allows them to start, 2 weeks from now, to start the install, and it'd be fully operational within, a few weeks. Yes, sir.
You say this is just projectors, or is it sound equipment as well?
Projectors, some sound equipment, but mainly the projectors and installation. I think the projectors themselves were $62,000 for the 3 projectors. So there's some equipment and installation labor that goes along with that. It also will impact as we look forward to your agenda with renovations, whether or not it's here or movement of council meetings and hosting them at the Civic Center during that, either temporarily or permanently, until we get some kind of a solution worked out. We'll be very limited in what we can do and host there, even if it's like a council meeting. So I know we had some issues about the echo. You said it was like a fishbowl, I think.
Right.
So this would address that as well.
I was at that event that Ms. Tebow spoke at, and projectors definitely need to be worked on, but the sound equipment also.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, this was supposed to be the sound system, everything to get it where it addressed your issues with reverberation and acoustic feedback.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this since I know Eugene and I joined, and probably before Sonia was on the council. I mean, is everybody comfortable moving forward with it?
Yeah,
I realize it tastes bad, but
that's a big selling point for anybody that rents that place.
right.
If you don't have good equipment, they're not going to want it.
Right.
Yeah, we got to do it.
It's like Barry said on the sidewalks. We tried to wait on that, and price just went up even more.
Mhm.
So everybody's comfortable moving forward with that.
Yes, sir.
All right, Billy, shooting fireworks at Children's Festival in the park. Any questions of Billy on this? I know this is something that pretty routine. We do this every year.
Absolutely. So same company. Well, actually, the company's been bought out, but the same people shooting fireworks. So.
Yep. All right. No questions of him. We'll move on to introduce ABC license request, which is just introduction for the Family Dollar store. So everybody good with that agenda? Any additions? All right, we'll move on back. We'll move back to our work session agenda. Running a little behind here. So Billy and Jonathan, you want to tell us about some reorganization of your staff?
At the strategic planning meeting, this was something that we discussed. If you recall, we had a slide deck up about potentially reconsolidating Billy's title with additional responsibilities to encompass liaison with the library, Main Street, and the tourism programs here at the city to kind of streamline operations. His title would be Community Service Director or Director of Community Services and Recreation. It would mean that we would pull up Blake into a superintendent. I don't know what you called that, but it was Parks and Recreation Superintendent role. And then Director of Tourism and Community Relations would be Tammy's title. And was there one other? Or no? That's it. And then Mariah would still be called the Main Street Executive Director. But it would be part of your, Q1 goals. You asked about restructuring the city staff and making that. Additionally, I think you also mentioned that you didn't necessarily feel it was appropriate to have the council do the interviews for some of those positions, like the Main Street Director. That was something you felt comfortable with the mayor and staff doing those interviews. So it changed the appointment authority. So what you'll see in your packets isn't for action tonight. Rather, it's for your review to make sure that you're comfortable with it, and then potentially take it up as early as the 15th of March. But that's the plan that we came up with. Wanted to introduce it to you. It's one of those Q1 goals, and of course, it's up to you on when you want to act on it or if you want to act on it.
Would this complete the restructure that we discussed? Would this be the only action needed to do that, or will there be other resolutions forthcoming?
This should be everything.
Okay. So this accomplishes everything we discussed at that meeting?
At that meeting.
Okay. Are any questions tonight? I mean, obviously, we're not taking action on this tonight, but it's the first time I'm seeing it. So why don't we just review this independently and be prepared to discuss it in 2 weeks? All right. Any questions tonight, though, of Billy or Jonathan? I think everybody understands. It's the first time we've heard this. Everybody understands what's going on.
Do you want us to send you out a copy of the org chart?
Yes, please. We don't have that.
Okay.
Y'all could send that.
We can do that.
All right. Veterans Home update. Barry and Jonathan.
So I just want to preface this by saying that, the ADVA, it's their project, their plan. We have certain obligations. Your Q1 goals talked about getting an update on what the city's obligations were to support that and if we were on track or having any issues with it. So, any pictures that you may see or whatever, that's just the latest that we've got from the ADVA and the information that we know. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the ADVA or end up in the media that this is what the ADVA is doing. We can only talk about what the city is obligated to do and tell you where we're at. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. So as I was going to preface that the same way that we've got some stuff there that we want to show you that we've received from the consultant about what the ADVA looks like on the site. Engineering has received civil drawings as of the end of last week for the project. So we're going through the civil drawings now. It's a pretty substantial set of plans. We're working with Poly Engineering for one of the roads that he'll go through in a minute, and making sure that what the city's proposing and what the consultant's proposing for ADVA will line up. And I thought it'd be easier for one person to talk through, so I'm going to turn the presentation over to Glenn, and then I'll wrap up at the end. So, Glenn.
I'll have about 3 slides. This is kind of the way I'm going to do this kind of overview. I'm just going to talk as briefly as I can, basically looking at the overall layout plan and then the roadways that are associated with the VA home. We're going to talk a little bit about Dozier Road, the utilities, and then I'll talk a little bit about schedule. As you go ahead, Barry. Most of you have seen this. Obviously, things have progressed to the point where the civil plans, like Barry mentioned, have already been submitted to the city. So some of this is becoming more public than it once was. This is basically an overall layout plan for the whole facility. That's Hickman Road on the right, and then right there, going straight up and down, and then Dozier to the top side borders the property to the north, and then to the west is Highway 51. So that triangular piece of property there obviously is considered the VA property. And then there's a road that goes all the way through the property, or will be, and I'm going to call that the VA Parkway. And that's kind of the way we're referring to it. So just I'm going to briefly kind of go down through these bullet points that I have, but there's 3 primary access points to the VA home. The primary access is going to be off of 167. That's the one that they're going to do some decorative things there and make that the primary entrance. The secondary entrance is going to be off Highway 51. In the middle there's a cul-de-sac kind of decorative area there. The service access for the facility actually is going to come off Dozier Road and come into the back of the facility. The VA Parkway it goes from Highway 51 all the way to 167. The plan now is for ADVA to construct that parkway. There will be some assistance from the city for the paving of that that's still being worked out at this point. But that road the plan right now is for that road to be a public roadway. So there'll be a right-of-way dedicated for that parkway all the way through. We were looking at a minimum of 60 feet. Now that we have the construction plans, we're going to review that. It may have to increase a little bit, and they expect that. There will be a water main that will go in that roadway or in that parkway from 51 all the way to 167. I mentioned that there's a roundabout that's in there that would be included in that right-of-way that would be dedicated. Lighting is also something that ADVA wants along that road. The intent now is for ADVA to install all that lighting and then the city to consider maintenance and power for that, which is not atypical of most roadways in the city. So that's something that's still being worked out. As far as Dozier and Hickman Road are concerned, obviously there's the ADVA has asked that some sections of that roadway be closed. Those are still being worked out. The right-of-way, however, in those roads are to be maintained. And we're proposing to increase the right-of-ways actually on Dozier and Hickman. Right now it's 35 feet. The plan now is to increase that right-of-way through the whole perimeter and come off of the VA property to at least 60 feet so that in the future that right-of-way would be there. And the VA has no issue doing that. And we'll also include some right-of-way flares and other things at the intersection to hopefully improve that in the future if that road is constructed later to join all that together. Dozier Road on the back side, where their service entrance would be, the plan right now is for that construction to be done by the city. We're considering now Public Works building that roadway. It'll be built in a cross section, probably about 26 feet of paving with shoulders and ditches, and terminate with a cul-de-sac at the eastern side or the property line that the ID board owns. Now, the ID board does own property to the north of Dozier Road, so Dozier Road would be providing access to that property as well. There will be a roadway stub out from Dozier Road to the VA service road to the back off of Dozier. There are some drainage considerations that we'll be putting in to accommodate ADVA's drainage on the back side of their facility. The plan is to do a sewer main that will be in that roadway prism of Dozier Road because the VA facility's main sewer service is going to be to Dozier Road on the back side of their facility, so that's where that sewer will be picked up. And also a water main is planned to go along Dozier Road to stub out there at the cul-de-sac to basically provide for future development. As far as the sewer, I mentioned it would be at the back of their facility. The ADVA is proposing some solid screening, which was something that we brought out would be necessary based on the type of facility. They're going to do that at the back of their facility, and of course that maintenance responsibility be ADVA's. Yeah.
I know we've seen this, but the facility itself is right here. I know y'all seen it just to make sure everybody's oriented correctly. That's the VA facility.
That's correct. Yeah. It's laid out kind of in a circle. It's got a central core, and then they call them like pods are laid out kind of as leaves off of that, so to speak. The primary sewer main will be located along Highway 51, and it's going to be in an easement, like a 30-foot utility easement, not actually on Highway 51 right-of-way. And then there's an outfall that's planned from 51 that will go to a pump station on Highway 84. And there's 3 easements involved in that, and we're in the process of obtaining those easements currently. There's also upgrading a sewer pump station in HSIA in the industrial park where all this flow eventually will go, and that's under review. As far as the water improvements, there's basically 3 connections that are being made. One of the things the ADVA wanted was a lot of redundancy. So the water department said basically that we need to make 3 connections. One of those is on Highway 51. There'll be along the Parkway, there's going to be a 12-inch water main that'll run along the Parkway from Highway 51 all the way over to 167 and make that complete connection. That will provide a tremendous amount of redundancy to the facility. In addition to that, there's going to be a 10-inch water main along Highway 51. It's going to run from the industrial park there, like Barry's showing, all the way up to Dozier Road, and then turn up Dozier Road out to the cul-de-sac. So that's the plan. The VA's water service is located in the front of their facility, right at their entrance. Right there's where they actually would be getting their water service. We found out at the last meeting that due to some issues with the water pressure that they needed, there are going to be some booster pumps put in their facility, but there's nothing that we could do about that, and that's something the VA is having to do and agree to. Just a couple of other notes. The electrical and gas services, we had some contact. The electrical service is going to be by Alabama Power Company, and it'll be along Dozier Road. They'll get all their electrical service from the rear. Their gas service is going to be by Southeast Gas, and that's being worked out with Southeast Gas. And as Jonathan mentioned, as far as I know, nothing that the city has committed to do is off track at this point. Everything's on track. I don't see any reason why those things can't be met, and we can't meet the ADVA schedule. Speaking of schedule, just quickly, as Barry said, the civil site plans were submitted already. The building plans are expected to be delivered to engineering very soon, according to the VA architect. As far as the VA schedule, in the last meeting, and I'll kind of caveat this like Jonathan did, this is our best understanding based on the last meeting. And we've been having Zoom meetings with their design team every 2 weeks since they started designing. So that kind of keeps us in the loop and keeps the coordination going. But at the last Zoom meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, they said they plan on pre-qualifying contractors for their construction at the end of March. And they expect construction to start in June of this year. And they expect their projected opening of the VA facility would be in December of 2024. So that was as of 2 weeks ago at the last meeting that was held. And like I said, everything that I'm aware of that the city's committed to is on track, and it's in design phases of numerous things. And now that we've got a full set of their construction plans, obviously there's some coordinating we'll be doing to kind of finalize that.
All right.
So I'm sorry, I know that's a lot, but
No, I think that's exactly what we asked for. Barry, you got anything to add?
I just want to reiterate, off of that new Parkway, that's what the public's going to see. That's where you're going to enter and exit the facility, the backside of Dozier Road. That's where all the services are going to be. That's where the workers will come in and out. So kind of got a front and a back door to this facility. The other thing I was going to point out is the schedule that Glenn just presented to you is within a month of what the original schedule was way back when. So nothing's changed. We're on that same path. The city is working really hard to distinguish what we can be doing right now to get ahead of this curve so that they're not waiting on us, and we're doing that as we speak. So as Glenn said, I don't see anything that we're not doing is going to be holding up the project. So we just want to give you a quick update of where we were today. And if you're interested and want to see the civil plans, you're welcome to come to my office and look at them. They're about that thick. And I'm expecting to get the architectural plans within the next week or two. So those should be in hand shortly as well.
All right. Any questions of Glenn or Barry? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. So I have a request from Mr. Tullis, Mr. Cotter for an executive session regarding economic development and real estate negotiation. Anything else? And litigation update. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for economic development,
So moved.
real estate, and litigation.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, it is 5:39. We expect this will take about 20 minutes. So when we when we get out, we'll adjourn our work session and go straight into our regular meeting.
Behave. Scotty, so it's the 15th is at 4. The 15th is at 4. The next council meeting. 4. Yeah, work session. Session. 4. Mm-hmm. Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock. We could get the room called to order. All right, I will now call this meeting of the Enterprise City Council to order. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. If you don't mind, please stand with me for our opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Do we have Dr. Olivia Poole here?
Let us pray together. Eternal and everlasting God, we give you thanks for the opportunity we have to come and take care of the business of our city. We give you thanks for a wonderful place to live, a place to raise our children and grandchildren. Lord, I ask that you will bless this body as they lead us and guide us into the future. In your Son's holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, council, you have the agenda which we discussed in the previous work session, so I will call for a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So moved. Sorry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now consider the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the city council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of the member of the city council. I will now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Beverly, let the record show will recuse due to a conflict on accounts payable B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I'll now recognize, is that Stefan Burley? Church with a U? It's not here. Church with a U has requested to obtain a permit to hold the 2022 egg drop on Saturday, April 16th, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Bates Memorial Stadium. You know, we got that request in our packet. Billy and Chief Davis told us in the work session everything's okay, so he's not required to be present for us to grant this request. So, does anybody have any questions?
Make a motion, we approve it.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the request. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now have the time of the meeting called privilege of the floor. This allows anybody here in our presence tonight to address the council for 3 minutes. Is there anybody here that wishes to take privilege of the floor? All right. Yes, ma'am. You may come forward. And just a reminder to everybody in the room that typically the council will not respond directly to somebody. We'll take our time at the end of the meeting for those responses. So.
My name is Jennifer Braden, and I am the director of a grant program located at Enterprise State Community College called the Educational Opportunity Center. So we are a brand new grant program. We are funded by a Department of Education grant to help find individuals in our community that are not enrolled in any type of higher education or have not completed their high school education, and then we help them bridge into some type of education. So if they need adult ed, we'll help them get affiliated with adult ed. If they want to enroll in some type of post-secondary or higher education training, then we will help them with that. So we are out in the communities. We serve Coffee, Geneva, Houston, and Dale counties. And we are looking for individuals and community agencies to work with to help. So that is what we just wanted to introduce ourselves to the city council. We've been here just for a few months, and we are, working out there, getting to know people and getting to work with community agencies. And so we just want to make sure that y'all are familiar with us, so that if you come across an agency or an individual that is looking for a resource to get into education, that we are here to help them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is anybody else here for privilege of the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to staff reports. Any members of staff wish to address the council?
Good evening. Just one quick comment. I brought this up last council meeting, but the new recycling at Public Works is now open as you're facing from Main Road, Glover to the left. So it used to be tucked up to the right. So we're running both facilities right now for the public to know. You can still take it to the old facility. We're trying to get signage done. Hopefully that'll be done by the end of the week. Have it up so they'll see it by the road and also on the fence. That'll be a lot better, safer, easier to drop off your recycling. So I just want to remind people that if you start coordinating to the left, down at the bottom of the hill, and then we'll run simultaneously for 30 days. And then we'll officially switch over first next month. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that Barry met with me about today, we've hired a code enforcement. He's been on about a month now. And so just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we're still actively looking at that. Nuisance properties are a big deal. I know that's a big agenda item for the council, certainly some of the public that have been coming up here. So know that we are actually working on that now. We've got some of them, we're trying to break it off a section of nuisance properties at a time. So go ahead and, so one of those right now we've got a binder on. I'm not sure exactly how many property owners, but it maybe 40 or 50. And we're going to start mailing out letters this week on those ones that we've already identified, and then move on to the next. And then we'll have a process where, it will go through the legal system if, they're not in compliance with the corrections or actions that are recommended by the code enforcement. So just want to make sure you had an update on that. I know that was something that Sonia had asked about last week, and making sure that staff was communicating that. Barry, do you have anything?
I just want to tell you, we've made a lot of hay the first 3 weeks with our new code enforcement. Our nuisance complaint responsive have more than doubled from last month. So I think it's triple, actually. I don't have those numbers here in front of me. but we're making a substantial dent in it, and you'll continue to see that in the coming weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Jonathan or Barry on those topics? All right, thank you. Any other staff reports? All right, we'll move on to old business. So I will now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 020122, providing for the annexation and zoning of 184 acres of land owned by Shang and Fay Howell into the city limits and to establish zoning of TH3 Townhouse District. The recommendation is made from the Planning Commission to deny the request. So I will now declare this hearing to be open, and I'll ask for a show of hands of who's here to speak for or against this issue. All right, and you're speaking for. Is anybody here to speak against? All right, you may come forward. And please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. And
yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Tom Sams. I'm owner of Longleaf Engineering. Developed these plans. Also partner with Mr. Todd Bolin. Mr. Todd Bolin on this project. We're partners on this project, and so I just wanted to briefly give you a little bit of history about how we got here today and why we are asking for what we're asking for. We initially presented this plan to the City Planning Commission back in October and ended up getting delayed a month in November, and we had our first hearing in December. At that hearing, we presented a preliminary plat to the Planning Commission and the zoning and annexation request, which we're hearing tonight. And there was a lot of discussion at that meeting that was not, I guess, presented prior to them, as far as there were some comments about noise and development adjacent to the airport, that sort of thing. And I won't go into the details of that, but to make a long story short, that meeting was tabled to January, which was last month. And so last month, after a month of digesting from the Planning Commission, we represented our plan, and there was significant hesitation, as you can see from the vote, the roll call vote, about the development that we have proposed by there. And much of that, in our opinion, and from some talks with the Planning Commission members, was mainly because staff made recommendations against the density that we had there, in particular adjacent to the airport, and how that affected potential noise complaints in the future, that sort of thing. So we have been working with staff since that time, in particular Mr. Barry Mott, to try to come up with something that would be what we felt like is a palatable, reasonable solution for everyone. And we ended up representing a plan that actually reduced this subdivision to just the first two phases. And I think prior to this meeting, we had distributed this sort of visual aid there. And what you're seeing there is the name of this subdivision we're proposing, the Towns of Crosswinds. We made some distance measurements from the airport to our development. And you can see on the western side of the western portion of the property, it is closer to the runway than the eastern portion, and that was what was giving staff and Planning Commission some reservation there, I'm sure. Now you can see by just limiting this to the first two phases, it's more in line with what's already been approved across the street at the landing. It's almost identical as far as distances away from the runway and that sort of thing. So we feel like we've made a pretty good, reasonable compromise to present this new plan. We still have to go back to the Planning Commission for the subdivision hearing, because that was withdrawn last time after the annexation zoning recommendation. So we still have to go back to the Planning Commission to get a subdivision approval. But what they will want to see, I guess, is the recommendation or the approval from from you guys, if you guys are in agreement with this plan for the zoning and annexation. We had initially requested the zoning to be TH3 for the entire, it's about 180 acres or so. This front phase is only about 70 acres. So we're trying to look at some options of course, this all depends if you guys are okay with the development, but if you were, we were trying to look at some options of how we could vote on this and move forward to the next planning commission meeting. The first option that we wanted to see if we could do was to amend the vote to just say, okay, we're just going to do the front phase 2H3 and the rest of the property a more restrictive zoning, agricultural, R100, whatever, we're okay with any of that. I think after talking with the city attorney, that seems to be a vote that might cause an issue as far as because how it was presented initially to the Planning Commission and how you would vote on it tonight. The second option is, which I was hoping y'all would consider tonight, and I think this is, follows all the necessary rules, is to go ahead and vote in favor of the annexation and rezoning to TH3 for the entire property. We have already submitted to Mr. Barry Mott as a contingency item a rezoning request. If this were to be approved tonight, we already have an application in his hands to rezone the western portion of the property here back to agricultural. So the plan would be the same. It would just take one more step on our end, but it would give us a quicker approval process so that we don't miss sort of a window of opportunity for construction and development if you guys are on board.
Okay, so, and we'll get, questions from staff. Does everybody understand what Mr. Sims is asking for? I mean, we all should have been in receipt of his email yesterday. I know some of us have spoken with him. So everybody understands the request. Any questions of Mr. Sims at this point? Which you will have an opportunity to come back if we need you. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Sims. So just want to make sure there's nobody else here to speak for or against. I am going to request some members of staff, but first I want to make sure nobody else is here to speak for or against. All right, Barry, would you mind? So just give us your version of events. What got us to tonight, and then your recommendation on moving forward.
Yes, sir. So the original request was to annex into the city the 189 acres, and when you annex into the city, you have to set zoning at that point. So there's actually two different actions that take place. One's annexation, the second's the zoning. They had requested a planning commission to bring the whole parcel in 189 acres and make that. Sorry, can you hear me now? And to make the 189 acres zone TH3. So
when you say 189, that's the whole.
That's the entire parcel, not just what was shown.
That goes all the way back to here.
That is correct. It goes all the way around, all the way down off to the bottom corner of the page. I don't remember the total number of lots, but it was in the 400, 500 lot range. Is that correct? A little over 400. The concern that I had and the engineering department had and stated to Planning Commission was basically two general statements. One, the density that we have close to an airfield, an existing airfield that we're talking about expanding. We're currently in process of taking our runway from 5,100 feet to 6,000 feet. And the reason to do that is to land larger aircraft, and typically larger aircraft brings additional noise with it. Our office receives complaints weekly about noise from existing residents that are in the city. So, of course, we're sensitive to any time that we bring residential close to an airfield. And so we reached out to Barge Design Solutions, which is our aviation consultant for the airport. and asked them to give us their opinion of this particular project and property as it relates to the airfield. And they went on record of producing a letter that I think you have that basically says they didn't think it was in the best interest of the airport to zone this as residential. I've had further conversations, and I asked them, well, if you're not going to do it residential, what would you zone this as? They said, well, if we had our way in a perfect world, it would be industrial or commercial, not residential, because you cannot limit airplane activity to daytime only. You can't say you can take off or not take off. It's open to the public. We receive FAA grants for this airport, and with that, it's open to the public for flying municipal aircraft. So my first concern was, of course, noise and density of the population for this development. Now, what they propose is, this is basically proposed in about 4 or 5 different phases. What he's shown you on the map that he's given you a hard copy of is the first 2 phases, which is closest to County Road 622. Those first 2 phases are the farthest away from the airport, and those are the least objectionable because they have the farthest away from the airport. However, we still need to have the discussion of do we want to bring more residential? Do we want to bring this into the city or not? And then what does that do about the backside? Just because it's zoned agricultural doesn't mean it's going to be row crops. It can still be residential homes, houses, similar to like a R100 type zoning, or they could request it to be something different. So my first one was noise. The second concern I had was we already have the property across the street as city property. So if we were to annex this property into the city, that we would now own both sides of the road. County's already contacted our department and said, if you own both sides of the road, you now possess the road. That section of road now becomes a city road, and that is now currently a county road, does not meet our current standards for width, build up, and with the amount of traffic that this would generate in addition to additional subdivisions that are already been either in construction in phases or not, like the landing, the traffic that would be generated that would come up 622 to Aviation Boulevard could be substantial. So improvements to that section of road would not be uncommon for us to do. I'm not saying that can't be done, it just costs money, and we would have to understand that that is an impact that the city would have to incur if this property was annexed and zoned and built as it is planned. So those are my 2 major concerns that I had. I'm not trying to rehash, many meetings that we had, but that kind of summarizes it. Mr. Johnson, you're on the Planning Commission, so I've missed anything that.
No, you're right on.
Okay. So that's just kind of at least a high-level review of my opinion for this project.
So you might have questions of Barry.
Did I understand you to say this would directly affect what we already committed to with our runway project?
So this project is not on airport property, and it would not be a direct impact as far as whether or not the runway extension goes forward. However, the back of these lots do back up to the airport property, and you would basically at the fence line, the back of the houses, as shown, not in these first 2 phases as he's shown now, but phases 3 or 4, those would back up to the airport property right up to where the runway will be extended. So does it directly affect the project as now? I would say no, but anytime you have noise complaints, and we have more complaints going to the FAA, if we get a noise complaint, just so you all know, the proper agency to handle noise complaints is the FAA at the FSDO. They're the ones, they're the safety administration that does that. So when they get complaints, goes all the way to FAA, and as we're requesting money to extend our runway, they do look at that. Is how does the community accept the airport? How much complaints are we getting? All that kind of gets factored in along with the justification and the need for the project. So it does indirectly affect projects like what we're trying to do, but it doesn't, not for this particular one.
I guess it baffles me that someone would move into a backyard of an airport and then complain about the noise.
Happens all the time. In my previous life, I have 20.
Or complain about a helicopter flying over when you move to Enterprise, knowing that we're right here at Fort Rucker.
But we have at least, I'd say at least one a week that we get, that we house, that we have to, staff has to take the time and address each one of those complaints that we do get, but it is on a, I'd say, weekly basis.
And we have made moves out at the airport to attempt to mitigate some of the noise complaints, right?
We are currently in final for a right-hand pattern for the airport, runway 5, which would exit off and to the right, takes it off of the Tartan Pine area and moves it to the right, which is on this side of the runway. However, I did verify that the approach as put on the charts is about a mile off the runway, so it's not directly over where this project is, but it does put traffic in a pattern on this side of the airfield.
So, any other questions, Barry?
It is, and that's just it is a voluntary noise abatement procedure, which means that pilots have full control of their aircraft. When they take off, it depends on the pilot, his expertise, what kind of aircraft it is, what kind of the winds, what the environmental conditions are, a lot of things. Pilot has full control. We don't dictate how a pilot leaves the airport. That is completely up to him. We have signage on the airfield that says, please take a right-hand pattern, but he's not mandatory that he or she does that. The pilot has full control of his aircraft. That's why it goes to the FAA as a FSDO complaint if somebody has low-flying aircraft.
So, I believe they call it, is it a crosswind runway?
Yes, sir.
So, right now, obviously, pie in the sky dream, but what would the effects of this development be on the potential of a crosswind runway?
You know, typically for an airport like this, there's nothing on the plans right now for a crosswind. The FAA has not approved that. However, they look at prevailing winds and serviceability of a runway, whether it meets a certain percentage of the usable needs for a runway. Typically on an airport like this, a crosswind runway would be a north-south direction in an airfield like this. So, you know, you would not want to put a crosswind runway over where the T-hangars or the ramp or the terminal is. So if it were approved by the FAA to move forward with that project, it would more than likely fall right across somewhere in that future additions portion of this project.
Out here.
And this is just, I haven't got approved, but something very similar to that is what I would kind of expect.
So not over the first two phases.
Not over the first two phases, but potentially over the other ones now.
So that good segue to my next question. So if this were brought today as a fresh request and it was just the first two phases and the back agricultural area that they're recommending were not part of it, what would your position on it be?
I'd still have the same concerns. Whether it's, you know, what is the proper density for putting residential right next to an airport? You know, I don't know what the right answer is, but I'll just tell you, in 20 years of experience doing this in a previous life before I came to the city and talking to our aviation consultants, any residential next to an airport is not a good idea. But if you're going to do it, you know, the farthest away you can push it away from the runway, the farthest you can push it away from the end of the runway is better. But I'd still have the same concerns. I still have the same concerns about the road, about us taking that on and whether or not, you know, where would that move other capital projects that we currently have on our books? Where does that go? As well as putting any homeowner where the complaints I get are, can you make the planes not fly after 10 o'clock? The answer is no. Can you get them from flying over my house? The answer is no. Those are the complaints that we get on a regular basis, and this just adds more homeowners that are right next to an airfield. And just same concerns if it was brought back. But I do, and I told this to the developer, the first two phases are the least objectionable here. If the planning commission wants a project or the city council wants this project to go forward, these first two phases are the least objectionable of the ones that I have seen.
But you said something that I wasn't aware of. So even if it's zoned agricultural, you can still build residential on that?
Yes.
Just in a lower density?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
And well, there's a lot of property that we have within the city that's zoned agricultural that has residential buildings on it.
If you were to subdivide that, would it have to be rezoned?
If you were to subdivide the
agricultural.
I'd have to go back and look, to be honest with you. I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Had another question? Annexation. So this is not in the city.
No.
There would be an option, you know, if we did not annex, could the development go forward?
If we did not annex it into the city, you know, it could remain into the county and still be developed with the county's approval and through their process as well. There's some discussion of whether, you know, what the city's reach is about out into the county.
If we so chose, our planning
If we chose
jurisdiction
to
could.
reach out and affect that 1.5 mile outside police jurisdiction to have some control over that. I don't know that we've done that or not. That'd be a legal question for Rayner. But the way that currently we look at projects, if they're not in the city, we have not affected that because it's not a city property. We have not set zoning for those properties. But they would still have to go through the county and follow their guidelines, whatever that is.
All right. Any other questions for Barry? Rayner, would you come address some of the legal questions? So just first, just a general question of, you know, any observations?
Yeah, so I talked to Tom and Todd just before the meeting, and they asked as to whether they could change their request at this stage to show the new area to be zoned, and I told them that I believe my best legal opinion would be that they had to present that back to the Planning Commission, that our zoning decisions have to originate by ordinance at the Planning Commission. So Tom said, well, would it be possible for us to ask the council to, okay, forget that option, would it be possible for the council to approve the zoning as it's submitted to you with some sort of, I guess, promise that we'll go change it immediately. And Tom mentioned just then, I believe, you know, we'll put another rezone request in and have it changed. You know, my wheels were spinning as they were talking to me, and I told them that I would try to think of a way to best help them, but it had to be legally permissible to do that. And, you know, I probably drove everybody in this room crazy at one time or another being so cautious. I've never had this come up. I've never had a request come up where you basically are asking you to zone it contingent upon another zoning. In other words, you approve it contingent upon it being zoned back to back. My concern, I suppose, is, again, I think all zoning has to originate in the Planning Commission. I feel confident in that. And I just don't, you know, is it conceivable? I suppose. I don't, since I've never seen this before, I don't have the legal confidence that I wish I had to tell you, you know, for sure to do it. So, you know, I hope that that answers the question. I've just never had it come up, and I don't know that I know that our ordinance doesn't provide something like that, but
so from a legal standpoint, if we approved it, then the face of the ordinance,
it's done.
Would,
I mean, that's right. Now, I mean, I think everybody would say that we trust Todd Boland. I think the concern would be Murphy's Law, which is, you know, whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and if something happened that didn't get rezoned, you've approved it. There's no going back. You've approved the whole property TH3. So, you know, I want to make sure both sides are aired. It's just from a legal standpoint, you know, not researching it, not determining whether that's something that is permissible under Alabama law. I don't have the confidence at this point in time to tell you that you could rezone it contingent upon a promise for another rezone. I just have to be up front.
So you might have any questions for Rayner? All right, thank you. Any other staff? All right, Mr. Sims, Mr. Boland, would y'all care to respond?
Just a couple of quick points. One, The western portion of the property that we were asking to remain agricultural or rezone it agricultural, however we try to approach this. Certainly, if anything was done there in the future, it would still have to be either A, rezone, or B, go back through the planning subdivision process. So there's not a blanket approval there that just because it's agricultural that, we could go out there and build a subdivision. And to be perfectly frank with you, our target here is the first two phases. And if the city, decides that they don't want to allow anything on that western portion because there may be a future crosswinds runway there or whatever the case may be, we're okay with that. We're, like I said, we're really pursuing the first two phases. We would love, to have that opportunity down the road to do that, but if it's not in the cards, it's not in the cards. The other thing that I would say is that Rainer's right that there may not be, and I don't know that I've ever had to do this myself either. So this is not something that is something that I've done before as far as the zoning, but we've tried to make every assurance we could to you guys that that zoning process would occur. And again, we went so far, and I think Barry will attest to that. He has that application in his hand that says, hey, this is a rezoning application to rezone this western portion of property from TH3 to agricultural. So that's definitely in his hands. And even outside of that, again, I just wanted to reiterate that any development, whether it's TH3, agricultural, R100, whatever, still has to go through this planning commission for subdivision. So, I don't think your hands are tied by this. And again, our assurances are that process starts tomorrow if we get a favorable vote. So.
Any questions for Mr. Sims? All right, thank you. So Barry, you in fact have that application, right? Any Barry or Rainer, any response to anything Mr. Sims had to say?
I did look, sitting here, I did look up, if you rezone property and.
You speak in the microphone.
If you rezone property, I believe our ordinance, according to our ordinance, says that another rezone is not to occur within 12 months unless there is a caveat, unless special circumstances or hardship exists. So I wanted you to know.
So we would this would probably meet those standards.
I would think that is certainly
and that
possible.
would be upon us to determine the special circumstances.
Right.
So if we were to hypothetically go along with their request tonight, rezone this to TH3, then turn back around and rezone it to ag. What's that process look like? Remind us.
So they would go started the planning commission.
Practically, when would that happen?
I suppose it could be at the next planning commission.
But they got to do notification, right?
They have to advertise. That's right. So you'd have to get it on the agenda and advertise for the planning commission. I guess the planning commission meets Barry's at the 4th Tuesday of the month.
It just happened last week, so they have another week to turn in their package. So it'll be 3 weeks from today.
Now, one thing I did mention, I failed to mention to y'all that I mentioned to Tom and Todd was, if the council is not inclined to rule on their request tonight, would it be an option to speed up the process by having special planning commission meetings? And we've done that. So, they're concerned naturally, like any developer, is time is costing them money. And, Barry and I could go to the planning commission and say, look, let's see if we can speed this up. We've done that from time to time. It's not something common, but we've done it. So anyway, I hope that answers the question.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else here who wishes to speak at this public hearing regarding this, regarding Ordinance 020122, which is annexation and zoning of the Howell property? All right, seeing no one, I will now close this public hearing, and I will call for consideration of ordinance 020122. So what we'll do, I'll call for a motion. If it's properly motioned and seconded, we will then have discussion. So I will now entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 020122.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Now, go ahead, Greg.
I guess the question we have to ask ourselves on this, trying to put some common sense into government, is if this were to come to us in the new form, would we approve that tonight? And I think, we've all heard that people that have worked with developers feel that they would follow through with what they said, barring any major emergency situations. I think the only thing I've personally heard tonight that would cause a problem with someone building this housing is people complaining about noise. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think it's absolutely ludicrous that someone would move into an area behind an airport and then complain about the noise. You know exactly what you're moving into. So personally, I have a hard time telling people they can't do with their property what they want to. Now, I think the other problem that we do have to look at is if we're annexing in, it's not just telling someone what they can do without their property. It's, is the city willing to take on the construction that's going to be required on this road to widen it? And that, to me, changes the whole conversation. And I don't know that I've got an answer to that at the moment.
Scotty?
Well, my concern is the maintenance of the roads too. A lot of dollars are not projected, or we have not planned, so then what do? Stop some of the road planning in our third plan now? For one development out there, I gotta think of 30,000 people in the city. And being a former aviator about noise and everything else, you're right, Greg. I've seen it all over. I've been a safety officer putting airports in, and people will move out there, think it's a novelty, but you will get complaints. And then my concern is that we're stifling the airport now with either commercial or industrial that might come out there trying to grow this city. I think I said a lot at the Planning Commission, and I agree with them. There was 6-0 to deny it. I'll just end with that.
Eugene, did you have any comments, questions?
Well, I feel like if they had gone to the planning commission with this proposal for the 70 acres without the whole caboodle, the 189 acres, that the planning commission would possibly have approved it. So my thoughts were, yes, this could have been approved, but should we vote on it, or should they have to go back before the planning commission?
That's my thought too.
So
Sonia?
I guess that's somewhat one of the questions I had. What's before us today, in my opinion, is what's before us now to vote on, not what they could have done. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I don't feel comfortable with voting on I guess one of the alternate, plans that they had. The other thing with the roads, Barry talked to us about that. That's not something that we plan for to do. That could create a problem. I'm just talking out loud. I do agree with Greg. It's ridiculous to move somewhere where helicopters are flying anyway, but we're gonna have to deal with it, and that means our staff has to deal with it as well. So we just about heard everything we could hear about it.
Do we have any kind of a cost estimate as to what it would cost to do that road?
Barry? Yeah, I mean, I'll echo a lot of things that have been said. I spoke to Mr. Sproul and Mr. Sims about this. To Sonia's point, we are being asked for something, asked to vote for something that there's a chance that we're not in favor of. You know, that's, you know, there is an issue there. You know, to Greg's point, you know, I do think, and Scott, I'd like your feedback on that. I mean, if this were brought just in phase one and phase two, that the other parts were not involved, what do you think the planning commission's?
I can't speak for them.
Right.
They were adamant, that's why it was 6-0 with the plan, but it's gonna I would feel more comfortable if it goes back through, and then all those folks can vote on that.
So as the ordinance is written tonight, it was defeated 6-0.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
With the plan that was brought forward then.
Yeah.
And I think they need to, like Rainer said, go back to the zoning. Those folks in the zoning or the planning commission needs to be brought up to this plan or the new whatever.
You know, and I do wonder, and I kind of alluded to this in my discussion with them this morning and the question I asked Barry of, you know, the annexation piece, you know, does force a legacy cost onto the city with these roads. You know, one way I've always justified the city taking on new development, new roads, was that, well, there's a lot of city revenue produced during the construction of the neighborhood, of the development of the homes. You know, that was a lot of tax money that went into the city coffers that could fund, you know, road improvements, road maintenance, those type of things. Where in this case, we are being asked, it sounds like, at least, you know, it sounds like we're being asked by annexing this in, we're adopting a road that's already built. It's already, and it's not up to city standards, right? So, you know, just when you start making economic arguments, but like I discussed with them this morning, I mean, it's, you know, those are arguments for economists to make. They're very difficult. They're very pie in the sky sometimes but, you know, I do wonder, you know, I know there's questions about sewer. You know, that's one reason you want to annex, and then, you know, is that in the mix? Yeah, my ultimate concern is and like I told y'all this morning, I wanted to talk with staff and see what their concerns were with this contingent approval. I'm fairly comfortable with what's presented here tonight. Of course, I kind of agree with Greg that, you know, I take a lot of issue philosophically with telling somebody what they can and can't do with their property. But we are talking about our airport here. You know, we can't pick up our airport and move it somewhere else. So I'm very cautious to make knee-jerk reactions to something that has a generational type of consequence on something like a airport. You know, cities are, you know, I don't want, and you know, we've talked about this recently, I don't want to be that council that the council in 2050 is sitting there saying, what in the world were they thinking? And then they go back and read the minutes and they see that we just kind of rushed it through. You know, I'm very hesitant, but at the same time, like I told you all today, I'm very sympathetic to the to your plight here of just having to grind through this bureaucracy of trying to get a project done that's going to be good for the city. That's going to, you know, increase our residents and increase our tax base. So, you know, I do think that you know, my current position is to err on the side of caution, and you know, and allow it to go through the proper channels of being reviewed by the planning commission. You know, as opposed to a contingent. And really, I'm more worried about the precedent that we could be setting of contingent zoning. Of, you know, is that just going to be a new trick in the book to expedite things and to pull bait and switches in the future? I do not think at all that's what y'all are doing. I do not think y'all are, but are we opening up the door for that type of activity? So, any other questions?
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Now, what exactly is that motion for?
The motion was to adopt ordinance 020122, correct, Greg? So,
Providing for the annexation of 180.
yes, Mr.
As it reads.
In the interest of the landowner here, if the council's will is to not approve the request, it would be better for the landowner to withdraw the request so there wouldn't be an issue later about rezoning the same, filing an application for the same property. That would be the safest thing. Now, they may want you to go ahead and vote on it, and that's fine. That's their call. But I just wanted to put that out there. That's the safest option if the council were not to approve the request.
Okay, so practically speaking, if the motion on the table is to be rejected, then it could cause them some issues.
Potentially. I don't want to say anything that would prejudice the landowner's rights, but because of the way the ordinance reads and revisiting the same property within a certain amount of time, it's possible for that to adversely affect their future plans. So, the safest course of action, if the landowner were told that this is not going to pass, is to withdraw the request and then come back with the clean proposal.
So we have a motion and a second on the table under discussion. So, in order to do that, I believe I would need to entertain a motion to table the motion. Would that be proper from a parliamentary standpoint?
I think that tabling it simply postpones the consideration of it. Which if they're already starting a new application, if they start a new application, I think that, I personally think if it's the council's will majority of the council will not to approve it, I think the landowner ought to be given the opportunity to withdraw the request. That's his call, totally his call.
Well, then I guess my question is merely parliamentary procedure in nature. We've got a motion in a second.
Right.
What would the proper way to back out of that?
I would say if before you vote, I would give the landowner the opportunity to withdraw the request. Withdrawing the request will moot the motion in the second.
Okay. Mr. Sims, Mr. Boland, would y'all care to respond to that?
I'm not sure I heard a definitive, a definitive action if it got declined. Typically, it's been my experience if we do have a declined vote, as long as we have a substantial change in a subsequent application, that the 12-month period would not be in effect.
Rainer, would you agree with that?
I think that the council could find, as I said, I stand by what I said. I think you could find special circumstances, but you would have to find that. Does that mean that a resident somewhere out that may object would disagree with you on that and challenge that? It's possible. So that's the only reason I say what I say as far as the landowner's safest course of action. But I think you could ultimately, when you consider it again, say we find special circumstances exist. It just is subject to challenge.
Rainer's a little more conservative than we are. I would just go ahead with a vote.
Okay. All right. We do have a motion second on the floor. Discussion is still open. Any other Any other discussion amongst the council? All right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion fails. All right, we'll now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 020122A, providing for the rezone of 6.31 acres of land owned by Frank Thomas from R65 Residential District to TH2 Townhouse District, located off of Ozark Highway and Porter Lunsford Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak for or against? All right, seeing none, the hearing is now closed. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 020122A.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now call for a public hearing prior to consideration of ordinance 020122B, providing for the rezone of 10.13 acres of land owned by EGC Investments, LLC, from R100 Residential District and B1 General Business District to R65 Residential District located off of Damascus Road. This public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak for or against? Yes, sir.
Thank y'all again for your time this evening. I know we've been at this for several weeks. I just got to say, and hearing the previous approval and this one coming before y'all now, y'all about to vote on a recommendation to densify an area that y'all are saying all the complaints are coming from. We just wanted to share our voice and opinion on this. Quickly, as drawn up and shown to you this evening, we're parallel with the landing, which always been approved, and now Tartan Pines, which is an area of jeopardy and voice of concern for complaints. Y'all about to vote on a motion to densify that area. So we were asked to do certain things and we're not able to do that. Also too, the next one after that will be 130 acres on Porter Lunsford Road. So once again, you'll be densifying an area from a larger lot to a smaller lot, dumping more cars out on a road that is maintained by the city. Thank y'all.
Barry, would you mind addressing that? 'Cause I think it does bring up a good point.
So on this particular request that's before you now, this was an area that was already zoned for our, let me get the right one here, sorry.
R100.
It was R100 and business across the front. They came forward to layout to take that to R65. I don't have the plot plan in front of me, but it was increasing the lots by a handful of lots that was already there, and it was already on an existing road. They did, one of the benefits for this was the Turnberry, which is the road that this dumps into, was a substandard road, and the developer also agreed to widen that to a collector road. So they're widening their road, they're taking out the front, they're making a better access into that subdivision, not just past this development, but that whole section of road. And that had to do with several things, to be honest with you. One, my request to make sure we added width that was needed for that subdivision. But also they were already doing some utility work underneath that road, so they had to tear that road up anyway, so they're putting it back as staff recommended to them. And we have not gotten those construction plans yet in for review, but that was in the notes from the planning commission that they agreed to do those things as part of the construction plans. So that's just a general statement. I don't know if you have any specific questions for me or not.
Anybody have any specific questions for Barry or Mr. Boland? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else here to speak for or against? Yes, ma'am. Could you? No, please. We've got people watching online and they cannot hear.
Hi, my name is Peggy Contreras, and I was just interested in knowing the actual location that this is going to be done in. And I live on Damascus Road, and I own property on there, so I just wanted to know where the actual location, since I didn't have any information.
So I'll defer to Mr. Mott.
So this is Turnberry going into Tartan Pines, right off Damascus Road. The existing road that's there, they're going to widen that road, and this will be when you're coming into the subdivision, it'll be on the left. Be on the left when you come inside the subdivision.
Anybody else here to speak for or against? All right, seeing none, I will now call this public hearing to a close. I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 020122B.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I will now introduce and call for consideration of recommendation from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to award bid requisition number 2022-01 for Sidewalk Rehabilitation to Lewis Incorporated in the amount of $162,375.34. Other bids received are as follows. Avery Landscape for $269,640. I'll now entertain a motion to approve this request.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now introduce and call for consideration of a recommendation from City Engineer, Public Works Director Barry Mott to award bid requisition number 2022-02 for concrete to Smyrna Ready Mix in the amount of $126 per cubic yard. No other bids were received. I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to new business. I will now introduce for the record a recommendation for the Enterprise Planning Commission to approve the following request for the rezone of property. A request by North Star Engineering Services on behalf of Kevin Axton for the rezoning of 139.56 acres of land from R100 Residential District and AGRIC-1, which is Agricultural District, to R85 Residential District and R75A Residential District located off of Porter Lunsford Road. I'll also introduce ordinance 030122 providing for the rezone of 139.56 acres of land owned by Kevin Axton from R100 Residential District and AGRIC-1 Agricultural District to R85 Residential District and R75A Residential District located off of Porter Lunsford Road. I will call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for April 5th, 2022. No action will be taken on this tonight. We'll now call for a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a First Amendment to the School Resource Security Agreement. The amendment relates to the cooperation between the City of Enterprise Board of Education related to the purchase of 2 police canines to assist the city school system. The city will purchase 2 canines for $38,000, costs to include training, and will be reimbursed by the board. The board will also provide a vehicle to the city to accommodate the canines and their handlers. The canines will remain in the custody of the city police department and will be used by the department when staffing levels require and when canines are not otherwise being used by the system. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to execute the First Amendment to the SRO agreement. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now introduce and call for consideration of a request from Human Resources Director Christina Meissner to enter into an agreement with GovernmentJobs.com Incorporated, doing business as Neogov, for learning management software and operation support at a total cost of $13,243.54 for the fiscal year 2022. Do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the request for this service agreement. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I will now introduce and call for consideration of change order number 1 to Harris Security Systems, providing for an increase of $27,877.27 to the contract for Civic Center AV equipment to reflect additional unexpected costs due to supply chain shortages. The change order adjusts the total contract amount to $147,603. $147,603.94. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adopt change order number 1 to Harrison Security Systems. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now introduce and call for consideration of a request from Billy Powell, Parks and Recreations Director, to shoot fireworks on Saturday, May 7th, 2022, during the Children's Festival in the park. All safety requirements will be met, and the show will be contracted through Pyro Productions Incorporated. The cost of $5,000 is to be paid by sponsorships. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this request. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll now introduce a request from Family Dollar Stores of Alabama, LLC, doing business as Family Dollar Store 32970, for a retail beer off-premise only license and retail wine off-premise only license located at 903 Rucker Boulevard, and call for a public hearing to be held at the regular meeting scheduled for March 15th, 2022. There will be no action taken tonight. Mayor, do you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I give the mayor's report tonight, I would ask that we take a moment of silence to remember those we lost and those affected by the devastation caused by the tornado 15 years ago today. We will always remember those lost. Know that as a community, such a tragedy did not break our strong bond as a community. It only brought us closer together. Let us please take a moment of silence. Thank you. Parks and Recreation, ARPA Youth Basketball Tournament, 8 and on the board, district champion, 10 on the board, district runner-up, 12 and on the girls, district champion. They were playing Gaston, Alabama, March 11th through 13th, 2022 in the ARPA State Basketball Tournament. Baseball and softball season began April 4th. Adult softball registration and church softball registration February 14th to the 25th, 2022. Upcoming tournaments and events, March 12th, 13th, Travel Ball USA Baseball Tournament. March 17th, Enterprise High School Baseball Tournament. March 19th, Enterprise State Community College Baseball will play a game at Warren Field. Special programs and events. On March 18th, we're going to host a ribbon cutting new disc golf course at Johnny Henderson Family Park. The name of the course will be known as the LZ Disc Golf. LZ stands for Landing Zone. On March 26th, the first disc golf tournament to be played at Johnny Henderson Family Park, known as BYO Wyndham Doubles as the LZ. This tournament will have 80 participants benefiting Enterprise Rotary Club. Engineering Department. Single family detachment 15, $3,490,000. Single family detachment 4, $324,000. Residential additions 22, $229,932. New commercial $1,594,000. Commercial addition 4, $367,755. Nuisance properties, investigated properties 18, verbal contact 6, email 5, notification mail 10, properties without progress 4, properties mitigated 8, mitigation in progress 6. Water Department. There were 27 new construction water meter services installed in the month of February. The Highway 167 tank rehab began January 20th, was about 10% complete. Well, number 6A is about 95% complete. President, this is my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Sonia?
Thank everyone for coming tonight, and thank you, Ms. Braden, for introducing yourselves to us. Like I saw you in the paper yesterday. Just want to thank our staff that's working so diligently with the nuisance properties and getting those names on the list for the demolition grant. I've gotten a couple of calls about that. So certainly we continue to keep those the families of those who lost their lives 15 years ago close to heart. And being the only woman on the council, I have to make mention that this is the first day of National Women's Month, so I'm sure you all will govern yourselves accordingly. Have a great night, everyone.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight also, and I'm thrilled to have a new code enforcement officer on board, and they're really working on these nuisance properties. We do remember the lives that were lost on March the 1st, but we need to continue to remember the families of these people who were lost. Thank you for coming.
Greg?
As has already been said, March 1st is a day that City of Enterprise will never forget. And I have a lot of stories I could tell about that day, as many of you could. And so we do absolutely remember all of those involved, as well as the families that are left behind. I also am happy to hear that the code enforcement officer is on staff and doing his work. I hope soon that we can start seeing some action against some of these slumlords that are operating subpar housing in this city. And thanks again to all the staff for all that you've been doing, and all the hard work and all the things that this council's been throwing at you. You've been handling it and taking care of it and keeping it on track. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming, and thank you for all those folks that are watching us online. I mentioned the last council meeting on last Friday. It was Severe Preparedness Week for Alabama. And I want to let you know, just an update, the Coffee County Community Emergency Response Team, along with Coffee County EMA and Amber from WTVY, the weather lady, we programmed 57 radios, and we had people coming from all over the Wiregrass. So I feel comfortable now that there was most of the folks I'd say were my age and older, because I'm an older person. But I feel more comfortable now that the radios that we fixed, that these folks had them in their kitchens, and I thought it was working and it was programmed wrong. So now that they can sleep at night knowing that if there is a weather alert, they're going to get it. So my point is, if anybody has a weather radio, they need programming, my information's on the city site. Call me, we'll get it done for you. I'll come to your house and do it for you too. And thank you to all our great city workers. They do wonderful work each and every day. And God bless them all. Thank you.
Yeah, like everybody said, and Mayor, thank you for leading us in that moment of silence. Certainly, I think it goes without saying that this city will never forget. And certainly to Eugene's point, we need to always remember the surviving family members who need to be in our prayers daily. Yeah, I did want to comment on the zoning issue. It is a good thing that we're having to address these zoning issues. It seems like that's the number one source of our drama. But how good is it that we have so many people wanting to invest and develop in our community? Not every community, not all of our neighboring communities in this area have these problems. I will say I've been on the council for a little over 5 years now and addressed numerous issues, and I think this is the first time I've voted against a rezone or something that somebody wanted to do with their property. So this tastes particularly bad for me. I just do not like it, but I voted my conscience, what I thought was best for the city. Doesn't mean it tastes any better, but that's the way it is. But we are adjourned.